Tejo stood in the middle of the huge metal room. His legs felt weak, but he kept his back straight. Around him sat hundreds of alien beings from across the galaxy. Their eyes stared at him with something worse than anger. They looked at him like he was nothing. The Galactic Council had been testing humans for 3 long years. They wanted to know if Earth's people could join their big space community. Today they would give their answer. Jiwoo was the leader of the Altarian race. She was tall and blue, with 4 arms that moved like water. When she spoke, her voice filled the room like thunder. "We have watched your species carefully," she said. "We have seen how you act when faced with danger. The Council has made its decision about humanity." Tejo felt his heart beating fast. Back on Earth, billions of people waited for this news. Children looked up at the stars and dreamed of visiting other worlds. Scientists worked day and night to prove humans belonged among the stars. Soldiers trained hard to protect their planet. All of them hoped today would change everything. "Humans are cowards," Jiwoo announced. The words hit Tejo like a punch to the stomach. Around the room, alien voices began to whisper and laugh. Some made clicking sounds with their mouths. Others shook their heads in what looked like disappointment. "Let me explain why we believe this," Jiwoo continued. 3 months ago, the Karathi pirates attacked your colony on New Sol. They killed innocent people and stole your supplies. What did Earth do? You sent diplomats to talk. You offered them money to go away. You did not fight back. Tejo wanted to speak, but the rules said he had to stay quiet until the end. He remembered that attack. The news had shown crying families and burning buildings. Earth's leaders had debated for weeks about what to do. They chose to negotiate because they wanted to save lives. 6 months before that, Jiwoo went on, the Veldrani Empire demanded tribute from your colonies. They said, "Pay us or we will attack." Every other species in the galaxy would have fought. But humans, you paid them. You gave them your hard-earned resources without firing a single shot. More alien voices joined the laughter. Veltar of the hegemony stood up. He looked like a giant red beetle with too many legs. "In our culture, we have a saying," he said in a buzzing voice. "Better to die standing than live kneeling." Humans seem to prefer living on their knees. Krixtal, the Nexari war chief, slammed his fist on his table. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. His species looked like wolves that walked on 2 legs with sharp teeth and glowing yellow eyes. "My people fight from the day we can walk," he growled. "We teach our children that honor comes from battle. Humans teach their children to run away and hide." So Young sat in the human section behind Tejo. She was Earth's best scientist who studied alien life. Her hands were shaking as she held her papers. She had spent years learning about different alien cultures. She thought she understood what they valued. But now she realized how wrong she had been. "May I speak?" So Young asked, standing up slowly. Jiwoo looked annoyed but nodded. "You may have 2 minutes," So Young cleared her throat. "Honored council members, I think you misunderstand human nature. When we choose diplomacy over war, it is not because we are afraid. It is because we are wise. Every battle has a cost. Every war leaves scars. We believe that talking is better than fighting when both sides can win." "Pathetic," Veltar buzzed. "In the real galaxy, there are no situations where both sides win. There are only predators and prey. Humans have shown they are prey. But what about human achievements?" So Young continued, her voice getting stronger. "We ended slavery on our world. We stopped wars that lasted for generations. We chose to work together instead of destroying each other. Doesn't that show strength?" Krixtal laughed, showing his sharp teeth. "You ended wars because you were too weak to fight them. You stopped slavery because you lack the will to dominate. Everything you call an achievement, we call surrender." Captain Minho watched from the military section. He wore his blue Earth Defense Force uniform with pride, but now it felt heavy on his shoulders. He had fought in 3 different conflicts to protect human colonies. Each time his commanders had told him to hold back. "Don't escalate," they always said. "Find a peaceful solution." He had followed orders, but he often wondered what would happen if they just fought back with full force. "There is more evidence," Jiwoo said, raising one of her 4 hands. "When the Zenthari Republic tested your defenses last year, your ships ran away. When pirates attacked your trade routes, you hired mercenaries instead of fighting. When the Drakmor Syndicate threatened your colonies, you moved your people to safer places instead of standing your ground." Each example felt like another nail in humanity's coffin. Tejo remembered every incident. He had been part of the discussions that led to those decisions. Each time Earth's leaders had chosen the option that saved the most lives. They thought other species would respect that choice. The final evidence, Jiwoo announced, comes from your own military records. We have seen your training programs. Your soldiers are taught to retreat when outnumbered. They are trained to surrender when facing certain death. They are instructed to value their own lives over victory. This is not the way of warriors. The room fell silent. Even the quiet whispers stopped. Taeho felt like the weight of his entire species was crushing down on him. Everything humans thought was good about themselves was being turned into proof of weakness. Therefore, Jiwoo said in her booming voice, the Galactic Council declares humanity unfit for full membership. You will be granted protected species status. Other races will watch over you and keep you safe from the dangers of the galaxy. You may not make military alliances, develop advanced weapons, or participate in galactic politics. This decision is final. The words echoed in the silent room. Protected species status was what they gave to primitive races that couldn't take care of themselves. It meant humanity would be treated like children who needed adult supervision. Taeho finally found his voice. We accept the Council's decision, he said quietly. The words tasted like poison in his mouth. As the alien delegates began to leave, Taeho stood alone in the empty room. Soon he would have to return to Earth and tell his people that their dreams of joining the galactic community were over. He would have to explain that everything they thought made them civilized actually made them weak. Outside the windows, ships from a dozen different species flew past the Council station. Each one belonged to a race that had earned its place among the stars through strength and courage. Humanity would never be one of them. The stars that once seemed so welcoming now felt cold and distant. Earth was alone in the galaxy, and everyone knew it was because humans were too afraid to fight. 6 months had passed since the Council's crushing decision. Captain Jae-min stood on the bridge of his defense station, watching the stars through the large windows. Earth now carried the shameful title of protected species, and the whole galaxy knew humans were considered cowards. But today, something was different. The communication channels were filled with panic. Alien voices screamed warnings across space in languages Jaemin didn't understand. His translation computer worked hard to make sense of the chaos. Captain, called out Lieutenant Bo-Ra from her post. I'm getting emergency signals from the Karathi home system. They're saying something about metal locusts and requesting immediate evacuation support. Jaemin frowned. The Karathi were the same pirates who had attacked human colonies. They were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors who never asked for help. Metal locusts? What does that mean? Before Bo-Ra could answer, the main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. The face that appeared made everyone on the bridge step back in shock. It was Commander Zeflok of the Karathi Armada, one of the most feared military leaders in known space. But now his red scales were pale, and his usual confident expression was replaced by pure terror. This is an emergency broadcast to all species, Zeflok said, his voice shaking. The Devourer Swarm has awakened. I repeat, the Devourer Swarm has awakened. All ships in the Outer Rim territories must evacuate immediately. Do not attempt to fight. Do not attempt to negotiate. Run while you still can. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Jaemin had never heard of the Devourer Swarm, but the name alone made his skin crawl. Get me Dr. Yoonji at Earth Command, he ordered, and contact our intelligence officer Young-soo. I need to know what we're dealing with. Dr. Yoonji appeared on screen within minutes. She was Earth's leading expert on military strategy, a small woman with sharp eyes who could predict enemy movements better than most computers. Captain, I've been monitoring the communications too. From what I can gather, something called the Devourer Swarm has appeared at the galaxy's edge. Every alien fleet in that region is retreating at maximum speed. What exactly is this swarm? Jaemin asked. I'm not sure yet, but the alien reactions tell us everything we need to know. The Karathi Armada hasn't retreated from a fight in over 300 years. The Veldrani Empire is abandoning 3 of their core worlds without even attempting a defense. Whatever this threat is, it has every species in the galaxy terrified. Young-soo's voice came through the communication system from Earth's intelligence center. He was a quiet man who spent his days listening to alien transmissions and piecing together information that others missed. Captain, I've been analyzing the evacuation patterns. Every major fleet in the galaxy is moving away from the Outer Rim. But here's the strange part. They're not just retreating. They're running like they've seen this before. What do you mean? Jaemin asked. The evacuation routes are too organized, too practiced. This isn't the first time they've faced this threat. It's like they all know exactly what to do when the Devourer swarm appears. Meanwhile, at the Central Research Station on Earth, So Young was working frantically to understand what was happening. She had contacts among several alien scientific communities, and she was calling in every favor she had ever earned. Her friend Calamore, a scientist from the peaceful Draxi species, finally answered her call. Calamore's blue skin was darker than usual, and her large eyes were filled with ancient fear. "So Young, my friend," Calamore said sadly. "I cannot talk long. My people are preparing the deep shelters. The Devourers have returned." "Tell me what they are," So Young begged. "My people don't know anything about this threat." Calamore's expression showed surprise. "You don't know? But every species knows. It is written in our oldest histories, carved in our deepest memories. The Devourer swarm is death itself. They are machines that consume entire star systems. They turn planets into metal and flesh into fuel. When did they last appear? Not in living memory. Perhaps 50,000 of your years ago. But every species remembers. We teach our children about the Great Hunger. When the metal locusts swept through the galaxy like a plague. Entire civilizations vanished. Millions of worlds went dark. So Young felt cold fear creeping up her spine. How did you survive? We hid, everyone hid. Some species fled to other galaxies. Others found deep places to shelter until the storm passed. The Devourers always leave eventually, but only after they have fed enough. But surely someone fought them. Someone must have tried to resist. Calamore's expression became even sadder. Many tried to fight in the beginning. None survived. The Devourers learn from every battle. They adapt to every weapon. They grow stronger with each victory. Fighting them is suicide. The only wisdom is to hide and wait. The transmission ended, leaving So Young staring at a blank screen. She immediately contacted Earth Command with her findings. Within an hour, every human military leader was in an emergency meeting. Admiral Hyun-woo, Earth's highest-ranking officer, listened to the reports with growing concern. He was an older man who had served in Earth's military for 40 years. He had seen humanity's greatest victories and most shameful defeats, but nothing had prepared him for this. "So let me understand this correctly," he said slowly. "An ancient machine army has awakened and is moving through the galaxy. Every alien species is running away instead of fighting. And according to their histories, this has happened before." "That's correct, sir," Young-soo confirmed. "My intelligence suggests that every major galactic civilization has ancestral memories of these Devourers. Their response isn't panic, it's practiced. They know exactly what to do because their ancestors survived by doing the same thing." Dr. Yoonji was studying star charts on her tablet. "Admiral, I've been tracking the evacuation patterns. If the aliens continue retreating at their current speed, they'll reach human space within 2 months. They're all heading in our direction. Why toward us? Because we're in the inner rim. Apparently, the Devourers always attack from the galaxy's edge and work their way inward. Humanity's territory is some of the furthest from where they usually appear." Captain Minho, who had been promoted after the council incident, spoke up from his position at the table. "Sir, there's something else to consider. The aliens are retreating through our space because they think we're harmless. They're not asking permission to use our trade routes. They're just assuming we'll get out of their way." Admiral Hyun-woo nodded grimly. "Of course they are. We're a protected species, remember? We're not supposed to be capable of stopping them." Young-soo pulled up a series of intercepted communications. "Admiral, you need to hear this. These are transmissions between the various alien governments. They're discussing something called the Final Protocol." The room fell silent as Young-soo played the recording. Alien voices spoke in their own languages, but the translation was clear enough. They were planning to abandon the entire inner rim if necessary. Billions of worlds, including Earth, were considered acceptable losses if it meant the major alien civilizations could escape to safety. "They're going to let these Devourers consume half the galaxy," Dr. Yoonji said quietly, "including us." "That's not the worst part," Young-soo added. "According to their communications, they believe the Devourers will eventually leave on their own like they did before. The alien governments are planning to wait in distant systems for maybe 1,000 years, then return to rebuild on whatever worlds are left." Admiral Hyun-woo stood up and walked to the window. Outside he could see Earth's orbital defenses, weapons and shields that every alien species considered primitive and useless. For months he had felt ashamed of humanity's reputation as cowards. Now he was beginning to wonder if being underestimated might be an advantage. "There's one more thing," So-Young said from her communication link. "According to my research, no species in the galaxy has ever successfully fought the Devourer swarm. Every battle in recorded history ended in complete defeat. The only survivors were those who ran away and hid." "Every species except one," Admiral Hyunwoo said quietly. "Sir?" "Every species except humans. We've never faced them before. We don't have ancestral memories telling us to run. We don't have genetic programming that makes us flee in terror." Dr. Yunji looked up from her charts. "Are you saying what I think you're saying, Admiral?" Hyunwoo turned back to face the room. "I'm saying that for the first time in galactic history, the Devourer swarm is going to encounter a species that doesn't know it's supposed to be afraid of them." The room fell silent as everyone considered what that might mean. Outside the windows, refugee ships from a dozen different alien species were already beginning to appear, fleeing toward the inner rim. Soon, Earth would be the last inhabited world standing between the Devourer swarm and empty space. For better or worse, humanity was about to get its chance to prove whether they were really cowards or something else entirely. The first Devourer scout ships appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system on a Tuesday morning. Captain Jae-min was eating breakfast when the alarm started screaming throughout the orbital defense station. He dropped his coffee and ran to the bridge, where his crew was staring at their screens in shock. "Report," he ordered, still trying to button his uniform. "3 unknown contacts approaching from the outer system," Lieutenant Bora announced. "They're not responding to our communications, and their design doesn't match any known species." Jaemin looked at the main display and felt his blood turn cold. The ships were unlike anything he had ever seen. They looked like giant metal insects with long curved arms that ended in weapon clusters. Their hulls were black as space itself, and they moved with an unsettling organic rhythm. "Those are them," he whispered. "The Devourers." On Earth, emergency meetings were happening in every government building. Admiral Hyunwoo stood in the main command center, surrounded by screens showing data from across the solar system. The room was packed with officers, scientists, and politicians who all looked scared but determined. "Where are our alien allies?" asked President Nara, Earth's elected leader. She was a small woman who usually solved problems with careful words and patient negotiation. But today her usual diplomatic tools were useless. "Gone," Young-soo reported from his intelligence station. "The last Karathi ship left our space 6 hours ago. The Veldrani evacuation fleet passed through yesterday. Even the peaceful Draxi have abandoned their embassy. We're completely alone." Dr. Yunji was studying the incoming data about the Devourer ships. "Their technology is incredible," she said with scientific fascination mixed with horror. "These aren't just machines, they're adaptive weapons. Each ship appears to be learning from our scans and adjusting its defenses in real time." "How is that possible?" Admiral Hyunwoo asked. "Near as I can tell, they're using some kind of collective intelligence. Every ship shares information instantly with every other ship. When one learns something new, they all learn it." So-Young spoke up from her research station. "I've been analyzing historical records from alien databases. Every time the Devourers have appeared in the past, they follow the same pattern. They send scouts first to study their enemies. Then they adapt their main fleet to counter whatever defenses they find." "How long do we have?" "Based on previous encounters, maybe 2 weeks before the main swarm arrives." President Nara looked around the room at all the worried faces. "What about evacuation? Can we get our people to safety?" "Where would we go?" Young-soo asked sadly. "Every alien government has made it clear. They're not accepting human refugees. They think we'll slow them down or attract the Devourers to their hiding places." The room fell silent. For months, humanity had been treated like children who needed protection. Now, when they actually needed help, they discovered that protection only went one way. Captain Minho entered the command center, still wearing his flight suit from a patrol mission. "Admiral, I just got back from intercepting one of the scout ships. We need to talk. What did you find?" "Something impossible. My squadron engaged the Devourer scout with standard weapons. Plasma cannons, kinetic rounds, the usual mix. For the first few minutes, we were actually winning." Everyone in the room stared at him. According to every alien record, no one had ever won against the Devourers even for a few minutes. "What happened next?" Dr. Yunji asked. "The scout ship started adapting. Its shields changed to counter our plasma weapons. Its armor shifted to deflect our kinetic rounds. By the end of the fight, our weapons were completely useless." "That matches the historical pattern," So-Young confirmed. The Devourers study their enemies and become immune to their attacks. But here's the weird part, Minho continued. Right before we had to retreat, I tried something desperate. I started randomly switching between different weapon types. Plasma, kinetic, energy, even some old chemical rockets we had in storage. For those few seconds, the Devourer ship seemed confused. Dr. Yunji's eyes lit up. Of course, the adaptation process needs time to analyze and counter each weapon type. If you switch fast enough, you might stay ahead of their learning curve, Admiral Hyunwoo finished. How fast can our ships switch weapon systems? Most alien ships are designed for efficiency, Minho explained. They use one type of weapon per ship, maybe two. But human ships were built by people who couldn't decide what worked best. We've got plasma cannons, railguns, missile tubes, energy beams, and kinetic slugs all on the same ship. Because we're primitive, Young-Soo said with a bitter laugh. Other species think we're too stupid to specialize our weapons. Maybe being stupid is exactly what we need, Admiral Hyunwoo said thoughtfully. Over the next week, Earth's military worked frantically to prepare for the main attack. They studied every piece of data from Minho's encounter with the scout ship. They analyzed alien historical records to understand how previous species had failed. Dr. Yunji developed what she called chaos tactics, deliberately unpredictable, fighting methods that made no sense by normal military standards. Instead of coordinated formations, human ships would break apart and attack randomly. Instead of consistent weapon types, they would switch constantly. Instead of logical retreat patterns, they would charge directly into danger. This goes against everything we know about space combat, Admiral Hyunwoo admitted as he reviewed the battle plans. Good, Dr. Yunji replied. Everything that everyone knows about space combat has failed against the Devourers. Maybe it's time to try something that makes no sense. So Young made another important discovery while studying alien evacuation records. I found something interesting in the Karathi military files. They mention that Devourer ships have trouble adapting during what they call transformation cycles, brief periods when the ships are physically restructuring their defenses. How brief? Maybe 30 seconds, once every few minutes. But here's the problem. You have to hit them with something completely different during those 30 seconds, something they've never seen before. Young-Soo looked up from his intelligence reports. I've been analyzing the pattern of alien retreats. Every species follows the same basic strategy when facing the Devourers. They group their best ships together, choose their most effective weapons, and try to fight a conventional battle. When that fails, they retreat in organized formations to predetermined safe zones. Let me guess, Admiral Hyunwoo said. That's exactly what the Devourers expect them to do. Exactly. The Devourers have been fighting the same basic strategy for millions of years. They know how to counter it perfectly. Captain Jae-min was listening to all this from his position at the tactical display. So what you're saying is that every previous species has failed because they fought like professionals. That's one way to put it, Dr. Yunji agreed. Then maybe we should fight like amateurs. The final scout ship arrived 3 days before the main swarm was expected. This time, instead of sending a single squadron to intercept it, Admiral Hyunwoo authorized a full-scale test of their new tactics. 12 human ships engaged the lone Devourer scout in what looked like complete chaos. Ships broke formation for no apparent reason. Weapons fired in random patterns. Some pilots even rammed their damaged ships into the enemy vessel when their guns stopped working. The scout ship tried to adapt, but every time it adjusted to one type of attack, 3 different attacks would hit it from unexpected angles. When it strengthened its armor against kinetic rounds, energy beams would burn through its weakened shields. When it adapted to energy weapons, chemical explosives would damage its sensors. For the first time in galactic history, a Devourer ship was destroyed in direct combat. But the victory came with a terrible cost. 8 of the 12 human ships were lost, and over 200 brave pilots died in the battle. When the wreckage was analyzed, they discovered something that made everyone's blood run cold. The scout ship was transmitting data back to the main swarm during the entire battle, Young-Soo reported. Everything we did, every tactic we used, every weapon we fired, they know about it now. So the main swarm will be ready for our chaos tactics when it arrives, Admiral Hyunwoo said. Yes, sir. We surprised them once, but we won't be able to surprise them again. Dr. Yunji stared at the battle data on her screen. Unless what? Unless we don't try to surprise them. What if we do exactly what they expect us to do, but we do it so badly that it becomes something completely different? President Nara spoke up from her position at the head of the table. Admiral, I need to ask you something important. Based on everything we know, what are our chances of survival? Admiral Hyunwoo was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, Madam President, based on the size of the incoming swarm and the power of their technology, our chances are essentially zero. Then why are we planning to fight at all? Why not try to evacuate as many people as possible? Because, Madam President, there's nowhere to run. The aliens have made it clear they won't help us, and the Devourers will eventually reach every corner of the galaxy anyway. If humanity is going to die, I'd rather we die standing up. The room was silent except for the quiet hum of computers and the distant sound of ships preparing for battle. Outside the windows, Earth looked peaceful and blue. The Devourer swarm arrived like a black plague spreading across the stars. Captain Jamin watched from his command station as millions of dark ships poured into Earth's solar system. They moved in perfect formation, blotting out entire sections of space with their sheer numbers. How many are there? Lieutenant Bora asked, her voice barely a whisper. Computer estimates over 5 million ships, Young-Soo reported from the intelligence station. That's more than the total number of ships owned by all galactic species combined. Across the galaxy, alien observers watched through long-range sensors, expecting to witness humanity's quick extinction. On the Karathi command ship, now hiding 3 star systems away, Commander Zeflock monitored the human communications with a mixture of pity and professional curiosity. The humans are not running, his aide reported in surprise. Their entire fleet is moving to attack positions. Zeflock's red scales darkened with sadness. Brave fools. They do not understand what they face. At least their deaths will be quick. But Admiral Hyunwoo had no intention of dying quickly. Standing in Earth's main command center, he watched as his fleet deployed in the strangest formation ever used in space warfare. Instead of the careful defensive positions that every military academy taught, human ships scattered randomly across the solar system. All ships, this is Admiral Hyunwoo. He broadcast to the fleet. Remember your training. There are no formations today, no coordinated attacks, no logical strategies. Fight like your life depends on confusing the enemy because it does. Captain Minho led the first wave of attacks. His squadron of 30 ships charged directly into the center of the Devourer formation, firing every weapon they had in rapid succession. Plasma cannons blazed, railguns thundered. Missile tubes emptied, and energy beams cut through space in wild patterns. The Devourers tried to adapt, but human ships kept switching weapons faster than their computers could process. When Minho's main guns overheated, he switched to backup systems. When those ran out of ammunition, he started ramming damaged Devourer ships with his own vessel. "This is insane," shouted Lieutenant Dongha over the communication system as his ship spun wildly through enemy fire. "We're supposed to be dead already." "Then we're already winning," Minho shouted back, ejecting his ship's escape pods directly into a Devourer formation. The pods exploded on impact, their small nuclear charges damaging enemy sensors. Dr. Yoonji monitored the battle from Earth's surface, watching as her chaos tactics played out in real combat. What she saw amazed her. The Devourer ships designed to counter logical military strategies were struggling against completely illogical human behavior. "They're firing at empty space," she reported to Admiral Hyunwoo. "The Devourer targeting systems are trying to predict where our ships will go next, but our pilots aren't following any pattern." "Because there is no pattern," Hyunwoo replied. "Our pilots are making decisions based on panic, desperation, and pure human stubbornness." Captain Jamin discovered the key breakthrough during his attack run on a massive Devourer command ship. His weapons had been completely ineffective for several minutes as the enemy adapted to each type of attack. In desperation, he did something no sane pilot would ever attempt. He flew his ship directly into the Devourer's hangar bay and started firing inside the enemy vessel. "What are you doing?" Bora screamed as enemy fire lit up their ship's interior. "Something they can't adapt to," Jamin yelled back, steering toward the Devourer's central core. "They can adapt to weapons fired at them from outside, but they can't adapt to weapons fired at their vital systems from inside." The tactic worked. The Devourer ship's adaptive systems couldn't protect internal components from weapons that were already inside its defenses. Jamin's ship exploded, taking the massive enemy vessel with it. Across the battle, other human pilots saw what happened and began copying the suicidal tactic. Ship after ship rammed into Devourer vessels, then exploded their reactors inside enemy hulls. It made no military sense, but it was devastatingly effective. So Young, working frantically at her research station, made another crucial discovery. "Admiral, I found something important." The Devourer ships go through adaptation cycles every few minutes. During those cycles, they're vulnerable to attacks they've already adapted to. What does that mean? It means if we hit them with plasma fire now, they'll adapt and become immune. But in 5 minutes, when they're adapting to something else, plasma fire will work again. Admiral Hyunwoo immediately broadcast new orders to all ships. "All units, this is command. Cycle your weapons every 3 minutes. If plasma doesn't work, switch to kinetic. If kinetic doesn't work, switch to energy. If energy doesn't work, ram them." The battle became a deadly dance of adaptation and counter-adaptation. Human ships would attack with one weapon type until the Devourers adapted, then switch to a different weapon, then switch again. Meanwhile, Devourer ships struggled to keep up with the constantly changing tactics. Young Soo noticed something else strange happening. "Admiral, the Devourer formation is breaking apart. They're not coordinating as well as they did at the beginning of the battle. Why would that happen? I think their collective intelligence is getting overloaded. They're used to fighting enemies who use predictable strategies. Our chaotic approach is feeding them so much contradictory data that their shared network is having trouble processing it all." Dr. Yoonji looked up from her tactical analysis. "It's like trying to adapt to random noise. You can't find a pattern in something that has no pattern." The turning point came when Taiho, the same diplomat who had faced the Galactic Council's judgment months earlier, volunteered for the most dangerous mission of the war. He had traded his diplomatic uniform for combat armor and was leading a boarding party against the main Devourer command. "Ship, I spent my whole life trying to convince aliens that humans were civilized," he said over the comm system, as his shuttle approached the massive enemy vessel. "Maybe it's time to show them we can be savage when we need to be." The boarding action was brutal and chaotic. Human soldiers fought through mechanical corridors with primitive weapons, shotguns, explosive charges, and even knives when their advanced weapons failed. The Devourers, designed to counter Space Fleet tactics, had no programming for dealing with infantry combat inside their own ships. Taeho and his team fought their way to the central processing core, where the collective intelligence that controlled the entire swarm was housed. The chamber was filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with alien light. "Set the charges," Taeho ordered, pulling out a nuclear device that would destroy both the core and everyone in the room. "If we take out their central intelligence, maybe the rest of the swarm will lose coordination." "Sir, the blast will kill us all," Sergeant Haewon pointed out. "I know," Taeho replied, arming the device. "Tell Earth that diplomacy didn't work, but this might." The explosion tore through the Devourer command ship like a miniature star. When the light faded, the massive vessel was breaking apart, and something incredible was happening to the rest of the swarm. Without their central coordination, individual Devourer ships began making tactical errors. They fired on each other by mistake. They moved into collisions. Most importantly, they stopped adapting as quickly to human attacks. Captain Minho, somehow still alive in his battered ship, saw the opportunity immediately. "All ships, this is Minho. The enemy coordination is failing. Press the attack now while they're confused." The remaining human fleet, barely 300 ships out of the original 2,000, threw themselves at the disorganized Devourer swarm. They fired everything they had, rammed every enemy ship they could reach, and fought with the desperate fury of a species that had nothing left to lose. And then, something that had never happened in galactic history occurred. The Devourer swarm began to retreat. Young Soo could barely believe his instruments. "Admiral, they're pulling back." "The entire swarm is moving away from Earth." "Are you certain?" "Yes, sir. They're regrouping at the edge of the solar system, but they're not attacking anymore. It looks like they're afraid of us." Admiral Hyunwoo slumped in his command chair, exhausted by the battle. Around him, his staff was cheering and crying and hugging each other. For the first time in millions of years, someone had made the Devourer swarm retreat. "How many ships did we lose?" he asked quietly. 70% casualties, sir. But the planet is safe." Outside the command center windows, Earth still turned peacefully in space. The blue oceans and white clouds looked exactly the same as they had before the battle, but everything else had changed. Across the galaxy, alien observers sat in stunned silence. The Korathi, the Veldrani, the Nexari, and dozens of other species had watched the impossible happen. The species they had called cowards had done what no one else in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had made the Devourers run away. Commander Zeflock stared at his sensor readings, his red scales now pale with shock. This cannot be correct. The readings must be wrong. Sir, I've checked them 12 times. The human fleet defeated the Devourer swarm. But how? They used tactics that made no sense. They fought like madmen. They threw their lives away for no strategic advantage. His aide was quiet for a moment. Perhaps, sir, that was exactly what they needed to do. News of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On every alien world, beings who had spent their lives believing the Devourer swarm was unbeatable stared at their communication screens in disbelief. The impossible had happened, and everyone wanted to understand how. Captain Jamin stood on the bridge of his rebuilt command station, watching as alien ships approached Earth for the first time since the battle. But these weren't invasion fleets or refugee convoys. These were diplomatic vessels, trade ships, and military escorts carrying messages of respect and requests for alliance. Incoming transmission from the Korathi Armada, Lieutenant Bora announced. Commander Zeflock is requesting permission to approach Earth and apologize. Jamin almost laughed. 6 months ago, the Korathi had been raiding human colonies and treating Earth's people like prey. Now their most feared military leader wanted to say sorry. Grant permission, Jamin ordered, but keep our weapons ready. Trust is something they'll have to earn. In the Galactic Council chambers, an emergency session was taking place. The same aliens who had declared humanity cowards now sat in uncomfortable silence as So Young presented Earth's new status to the galaxy. Honored delegates, So Young said, her voice calm but firm. Humanity appreciates the Council's previous evaluation of our species. However, recent events have demonstrated that your assessment may have been incomplete. Jiwoo of the Altarians shifted nervously in her seat. Her forearms moved in patterns that showed deep embarrassment. Ambassador So Young, on behalf of the Altarian Republic, I must formally apologize for our previous judgment. We mistook wisdom for weakness, strategy for surrender. Veltar of the Hegemony made clicking sounds of agreement. The Hegemony wishes to withdraw all previous statements regarding human military capability. Your species has proven that courage takes many forms. Krixtal, the Nexari war chief who had once mocked human cowardice, stood and bowed his wolf-like head. My people have always respected strength above all else. Today we asked to learn from the strongest warriors in the galaxy. So Young nodded politely, but her eyes were cold. Earth appreciates these kind words. However, we must discuss the future relationship between humanity and the galactic community. A holographic display showed the current state of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas where Devourer remnants still operated. Yellow zones indicated regions where alien governments were slowly returning from their hiding places, and green zones showed the expanding sphere of human protection. As you can see, So Young continued, human fleets are currently patrolling 70% of inhabited space. We are hunting down Devourer remnants, protecting vulnerable worlds and maintaining order in systems that were abandoned during the retreat. The alien delegates looked uncomfortable. They had all fled when the Devourers appeared, leaving their own people to face destruction alone. Only humanity had stayed to fight. What are Earth's terms for continued protection? Jiwoo asked carefully. Simple, So Young replied. Full membership in the Galactic Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Humans will no longer accept protected species status or any other designation that treats us as inferior. Of course, Veltar buzzed quickly. Humanity has more than earned full membership. There's more, So Young said. Earth requests the position of Galactic Defense Coordinator. Given our recent experience with existential threats, we believe humanity is best qualified to prepare the galaxy for future dangers. The request was essentially asking to become the military leader of all galactic civilization. 6 months ago, such a demand from humans would have been laughable. Today, no one dared refuse. The Council accepts, Jiwoo announced. Admiral Hyunwoo of Earth will assume the role of Supreme Defense Coordinator immediately. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Hyunwoo was meeting with Captain Minho and Dr. Yoonji to discuss the new responsibilities humanity faced. The human fleet had grown from 2,000 ships to over 10,000 as other species contributed vessels to the combined defense force. "Sir, we have a problem," Minho reported. "Half the alien crews don't know how to fight using our tactics. They keep trying to use logical formations and coordinated attacks. That's because logical tactics are what they've been taught for thousands of years," Dr. Unji explained. "We need to completely retrain their military thinking." "Is that even possible?" Hyunwoo asked. "I don't know, but we have to try. The Devourer swarm is still out there, somewhere beyond the galactic rim. They're learning from their defeat, adapting their strategies. When they return, we need every ship in the galaxy to be able to fight like humans." The Human War College was established on Luna, Earth's moon. Dr. Unji became its first director, teaching alien military officers the chaotic combat methods that had defeated the Devourers. The classes were unlike anything in galactic military history. "Forget everything you know about space combat," Dr. Unji told a classroom full of alien officers. "Coordinated attacks are predictable. Logical strategies can be countered. Today, you will learn to fight like humans, with desperation, creativity, and absolute refusal to surrender." Commander Zeflock of the Karathi was among her students. The proud warrior who had once terrorized human colonies now struggled to understand human military philosophy. "Professor Unji," he said during one lesson, "this makes no sense. You are teaching us to break formation, to fight without coordination, to make decisions based on emotion rather than logic." "Exactly," Dr. Unji replied. "The Devourers can predict logical decisions. They can't predict crazy ones. But surely there must be some strategy, some plan. The plan is to have no plan. The strategy is to be too unpredictable for the enemy to understand." Zeflock's red scales darkened with confusion. "How can warriors fight effectively without proper tactics?" Dr. Unji smiled. "Commander, let me ask you something. During the battle at Earth, did your species use proper tactics against the Devourers?" "Of course. We used standard fleet formations, coordinated weapon systems, and strategic retreat patterns when the situation became untenable." "And how did that work out for you?" Zeflock was silent for a long moment. "We were defeated without destroying a single Devourer ship. Now think about the humans. We used no formations. We fired random weapons. We rammed our ships into the enemy. We made decisions that no military academy would ever teach. And you won," Zeflock admitted quietly. "We won because we fought like humans. Crazy, desperate, stubborn humans who refused to accept that defeat was inevitable." Young-Soo, now Director of Galactic Intelligence, was coordinating the hunt for Devourer remnants across known space. His network of human and alien agents reported regularly on suspicious activities in the outer systems. "Admiral," he reported during a weekly briefing, "we've destroyed 17 Devourer scout groups in the past month. But there's something interesting in their behavior patterns." "What kind of behavior?" "They're avoiding direct confrontation with human ships. When they encounter alien fleets, they attack normally, but when humans show up, they retreat immediately." Admiral Hyunwoo leaned back in his chair, thinking, "They're afraid of us." "It appears so, sir. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers have encountered an enemy they can't easily defeat. They're adapting by avoiding us entirely. That won't last forever. Eventually, they'll figure out how to counter our tactics." "Maybe," Young-Soo agreed. "But by then, we'll have taught those tactics to every military force in the galaxy. The next time the Devourers attack, they won't be facing just humans. They'll be facing an entire galaxy that fights like humans." The transformation was already beginning. Across known space, alien military academies were revising their curricula to include human combat methods. Traditional formation flying was being replaced with chaotic attack patterns. Logical weapon selection was giving way to rapid system switching. Most importantly, the concept of inevitable defeat was being replaced with stubborn determination to keep fighting regardless of the odds. Captain Jaemin received the news during a patrol mission near the galactic rim. His mixed human-alien crew had just destroyed another Devourer remnant when the communication came through. "Captain, this is Earth Command," Admiral Hyunwoo's voice said over the intercom. "You're needed back home for a special ceremony." "What kind of ceremony, sir?" "The kind where they give you medals and make speeches about humanity's place in the galaxy." Jaemin looked around his bridge at the alien officers who now served under human command. Lieutenant Cressital, a young Nexari who had learned human tactics better than most humans. Engineer Velmoon, a hegemony technician who had modified their weapons to switch faster between different types. Navigator Ziara, an Altarian who plotted courses that made no logical sense but somehow always got them where they needed to go. Admiral, with respect, I think I'll stay out here on patrol. There are still devourers to hunt. I understand, Captain, but the galaxy needs to see what humanity has accomplished. The ceremony is being broadcast to every world in known space. Then send someone else to represent humanity, sir. Send someone who looks good in fancy uniforms and knows how to make speeches. Captain Jamin, you and your crew defeated the first Devourer scout ship. You developed the ramming tactics that turned the tide of the battle.